Hi everyone, I'm Megan Raymond, Director of the Jefferson Public Citizens Program, and I'm here with...
I'm Brian Colati, the Associate Director of the Jefferson Public Citizens Program.
And we have created a series of instructional videos to help you go through the application for JPC. So we're going to kind of talk through each section and give you advice on how to complete those sections, talk a little bit about what's worked in the past, and we'll probably work through them piece by piece. So this video is about the proposal part, the actual writing up of your project. Do you want to start, Brian?
Sure. So this is the first part of the application here that you see is the cover sheet. And what we've tried to do with some of these red boxes that I call out boxes is just guide you through the application process. And in other places, we actually have some text written in with comments about what you should enter into that section. So here we start with the basic title of your project, and we say choose a succinct title that accurately describes and identifies your project, because we want to put that on our website and we want people to know what your project is all about from the title. Here's a place also to put the name of your faculty advisor, and we have YouTube videos online that talk about how to find a faculty member who can be your advisor. But that's where you put their information there.
Excellent. Yeah, lots of good advice from JPC alumni on how to find faculty advisors and community partners, so I highly recommend watching those videos because they're the best source for information. The community partner section, again, listing the organization and the contact person. What you want to include here is the person that you're actually going to be working with once you're on site. And sometimes that may be someone other than the executive director or the director. So keep that in mind as you start to fill out this form. Also, if you have organizations that aren't on email, I'm thinking, for example, with our international projects, provide a mailing address and phone number. And then I'm going to chat a little bit about this new question here. Has your group been invited into the community to conduct your project? And we've marked this here as a pause point, and it's really a time for you and your team members to reflect on how you made contact with your community organization and how this partnership has emerged. And did it come out of a series of conversations where you were building trust and rapport, and then there was a moment where the community agency said, yeah, we'd love for you to come in and do that project? Or did you just sort of show up on their doorstep and ask if you could come do a JPC project there? So it's something to reflect on. We're just asking for a yes or no here, and it's certainly worth talking with your faculty advisor about to get their opinion as well.
And this next section has a place for you to put down the name of a graduate mentor. And you can think about graduate mentors in several different ways. First, if you approach a faculty advisor and they may be concerned a little bit about their time, you could always suggest that they have a graduate mentor who could be added to your project. But really, we want this person to be a resource for you and your team. It could be maybe a TA that you've met in one of your classes, or just perhaps a graduate student that you know that has some expertise in the area in which you're working. And there's a separate application for graduate mentors, but this, we just simply want you to indicate that you're thinking about having a graduate mentor on your team.
And sometimes the review committee will recommend that you get a graduate mentor for a project, depending on how complicated it is. And here is just a list where you list all your team members. The person who should have the asterisk by their name, that's going to be just your primary contact, the person that the JPC group team will be most in contact with. But everybody gets added to a collab site, so that's why we ask for your email addresses there. So now we're going to jump into talking about how to actually complete the proposal, the description of your project. This first section is really short. It's just a short description of your project. I've often heard it recommended that you write it at the end, and it should be something that like your parents could understand. We put it on a website. We use it a lot for promotional material, so it should be a really succinct description of what you're trying to accomplish with your JPC project.
And this next section is what we're calling the thesis statement. We have sort of a general name for it there because we realize that people are working in different disciplines, and different disciplines sometimes have different names for this. Often, maybe most popular way you see it is called the research question. And this is the essential question that you're asking that is guiding your research. Sometimes, in more science-oriented disciplines, you may see this called the hypothesis as well. But again, this research question is going to serve to guide your project in terms of what you are trying to find out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a very important part of the proposal, because this is what distinguishes JPC from other kinds of service activities here on grounds. It's this tie to the academic mission of the university. So having a research question that's meaningful and relevant is very important. Where I've seen applications sometimes fall flat is asking a research question that isn't really relevant anymore. For example, is smoking bad? Well, we've kind of got that answered. We know the answer to that question. So putting that as a research question isn't really going to be pushing forward on any new fronts. So think about the kinds of questions that you're hoping to address with your project and make sure that they need to be answered.
This introduction section is going to, in what it says, it's an introduction, so it's going to introduce us to your topic. You want to pretend here that the reader knows nothing about your topic. So it's going to start very generally in terms of introducing the topic. And then this is the point of the proposal where you're also going to identify the problem. So what is the specific issue that you're working with your community partner on? And here is also the place where you discuss any relevant literature. And you can think of the literature in this case as informing the problem. So, what work has been done already on this problem? What have other people thought about it? What results have they found? Mm-hmm. Where is there a gap in terms of the research that's been done already? And that oftentimes is where you're going to be situating your project, is in the gap, the question that people don't know the answer to yet.
Exactly. And your community partner can have some good advice for you here on how to frame your problem or the question that you're seeking to answer. I like to think about and encourage students to think about a funnel, which is that the top of the funnel is that big global picture like clean water, and then at the bottom of the funnel, as you sort of narrow down and localize it, it may be working on clean water in a particular village or a particular community, or maybe you're dealing with mentoring issues, and then how is that going to work out in a particular school or organization. So go from the big to the small, or as Brian said, the general to the specific. Let's see, methodology.
This methodology section is really laying out your strategy for answering the question that you've posed, that we've just talked about. And so you can think of it as a discussion of what you will do. How are you going to collect your data? What tools will you use to collect your data? Will they be instruments? Will they be surveys that you give to a population of people? Will they be interview questions that they ask? Will it be a focus group? You're going to be explaining all of those things in this section. This is the section where you also want to prove to your review committee that your project is doable. So if they saw that you were going to try to interview 200 people over the course of a fall semester, and each one of those interviews were going to be 30 minutes long, they may say that, okay, that's too much for your team to do. And I'm just using that as an example off the top of my head. But you want to demonstrate that all the things you're telling us you're going to do, that you actually can do them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think at previous years I've seen applications really trip up in this section by promising to do too much, that they're going to do all of it: focus groups, surveys, interviews, statistical analysis, and then when we actually go and look at the skills and abilities of the team members, there's a mismatch. So not only are you promising to do too much in your methodology, then you don't have the right people to actually do it. I think also I'd recommend to everyone here to take a look at the Institutional Review Board website. Ask your faculty advisor for suggestions on that. But there are lots of university and federal regulations about how we interact with human subjects, and there are some good guidelines to follow. So I highly recommend talking to the IRB in advance as you work on your methodology section, because they can help you avoid some potholes in your research design.
And their protocol that they will require you to fill out eventually if you are working with human populations will take you step by step through the research process, and it will force you to think about the most important items that you need to put in the methodology section here.
Yeah, it's probably worth looking at it first. I think, in my opinion, I would kind of do it backwards and start there. Okay, anticipated outcomes. This is an important section for the review committee because it's really talking about the impact of the proposed project and how you will interact with the community, how you'll share your findings with them. I think it's a very important time to really think about what you can accomplish in the project, and sharing and getting those expectations appropriately calibrated with your community agency, so everybody is sort of on the same page about what you and your JPC group are going to do for the duration of the project.
Yeah, I think sometimes the issue here is that the review committee is trying to guess what the outcome is going to be. So the clearer you can be here, the more explicit you can be here about what your deliverables will be to the community partner or what your final product will be, those things will help to make it clear to the committee what your actual outcomes are.
And it may be you produce a report or a video, or you give a presentation to the board or city council or the village. It really depends, but there should be some sort of outputs from your JPC project, and that's where you talk about it, is in this section. References. This is the literature you're talking about.
Yeah, this is a place where the review committee will want to see that you're well versed in the literature. You certainly want to cite any seminal articles that you've already put in your introduction section. And again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have read what other people have already done on your topic, what results have already been offered, where the questions are missing, and you'll get all that from the literature review that you do.
And this is a great place also to list previous JPC projects, and you can read about those. We have a link off the JPC website to the journal Public, and those are articles where students have been all around the world writing up their findings, their results. Please consult them, please cite them here. That journal is for you to use. So maybe you might be working on a similar topic, but maybe in a different location. You should probably read that article in a similar location, but maybe a different topic. Definitely read that article. Learn from your fellow JPC alumni how they did, how they designed their project, and how it all turned out. So you can't put too little in here. Again, just thinking about missteps on previous applications. Just a few links to a couple websites here is not going to serve you well. You really want to show that you've done your homework and you've really researched your project. And
if you're not sure about the sources that you can use, that's the perfect point to consult a faculty advisor or a librarian.
Yeah, credible sources are really important. As I said, you don't want to cite your roommate's blog or something that ends up being an infomercial. Something that you can actually find in a library that's peer-reviewed. So, this is for continuations of previous projects. So let's jump down to outcomes.
If you are doing a continuation project, we know that you've done the project in the past, but we don't want you to just sort of tell us how great your project was. We actually want some data backing up what you did, and what made your project successful. What can you point to that indicates that? Whether it's some numbers that you can give here, some statistics, but we need some indication here that the research you've done in the past was indeed successful, and it's something that could be funded again.
And for projects that are applying for funding again, this is a really important section. It's heavily scrutinized by the review committee. So even though there's not a lot of room to write, you want to be very clear about what's worked and what didn't in the past and how you're doing something different. And which leads us to this final section here about how your new JPC project is going to build on the work of the previous one. You might ask a new set of questions, or adopt the same methodology but go to a new location, or apply it to a different subject area. But be explicit about how things are different and how you're really building on the previous work. I think we'll stop here, and then we're going to start another video on budget and other parts of the JPC application, so stay tuned.